So hello everyone, and I hope everyone is well. I want to finish up chapter 3 today and really dig into all these different ratios here. And there's 5 different categories of ratios, and we're going to start off today with the what's called liquidity ratios. And the word liquidity means one simple thing. Okay, liquidity means the ability to satisfy short-term obligations as they come due. Okay, so from a personal standpoint, if you have to buy food every week, and if you don't have money to buy food, that's short term, right? Weekly to week, or gas for your car, you're not very liquid and you got problems, right? So a firm with greater liquidity will have an easier time paying its bills and is less likely to become insolvent. Because a common precursor to financial distress and bankruptcy is low or declining liquidity, these ratios can provide early warning signs, and that's important, early warning signs, right? That a company has cash flow problems that could cause the business to fail, right? So, I mean, this is an important statement here, so. So basically, you want to meet your day-to-day obligations, right? All right, and the question comes up, how much liquidity is enough? And it depends on many factors, right? Including the size of the company, access to short-term financing sources, like, credit, if you have a credit line, and obviously if you have cash coming in, right? And the volatility of its business. So we're gonna go over these ratios now, one by one. So the first one I want to do is called the current ratio. Now, the majority of these numbers, or practically all of them, will come off of the balance sheet and the income statement. So the job is not to do the simple division here. The job is to understand where these numbers came from and how to apply them and how to use them to determine if your company does or does not have problems. So the current ratio is equal to the current assets divided by the current liabilities. Okay. And both of those will come off of the balance sheet, right? And everyone should know that by now. Yeah, I don't know. It's not letting me highlight. Here we go. So we'll highlight that, right? So that's important. I guess it doesn't let me highlight the equation itself. I guess that's a different type of format. So now it's important that you go through these numbers, and the book gave you an example, right? For Whole Foods, their current their income statement and their balance sheet for the last 2 years. So you should know where these numbers are coming from. Okay, you should know. So I would go through these and make sure you understand where these numbers are coming from. Okay, and it's important you do that, right? Okay, so if you look here, look at these 2 years, and you can see the current ratio went up from 2015 to 2016, and this reflects that they either have more current assets, right? If this number got bigger, it could only get bigger from 2 ways. The current assets went up, or the current liabilities went down, right? So that's got to be reflected in that. And you see what they say. Whole Foods increased its liquidity position in 2016 to a level slightly above the industry average, as shown in Table 3.5. Now, if you go to Table 3.5, they have the industry average ratios as a whole. So the fact that they're higher than the industry average means either they have more cash on hand, they're a lot more liquid, okay? So the grocery industry is one in which cash flows are relatively stable and predictable. People have to eat whether the economy is booming or in recession, right? So that's kind of like an important point, right? And we all have to eat, right? I hope everybody had breakfast this morning, right? So in any case, so the average current ratio in the grocery business is 1.3, and that they've got more cash on hand, right? And whoops. All right. So as everyone should know, Whole Foods is now owned by Amazon.com, right? And they kind of talk about that here a little bit. And here's a nice personal finance example, which I kind of referred to, that basically shows you your current ratio for your money, right? And everyone knows that you should be able to do this from a personal standpoint, right? Here's your total liquid assets or your total debt. You want to make sure you're liquid, right? So it's 12.3% here, right? So if you look at this case here, this family, this is much less than 1, right? So they can only cover 12% of their existing debt. You see their liquid assets here are much smaller than their current debts, right? So, but I mean, we're all like that, right? If we have a mortgage, right? All right, let me see if I can play this a little bit and see what this is all about here. Hopefully it'll work.
Some of the financial ratios that financial managers use to analyze companies can also be used to help you manage your personal finances. The personal liquidity ratio discussed in this example is analogous to the current ratio that we use to analyze a firm's ability to cover its short-term obligations. The personal liquidity ratio equals a household's liquid assets, such as money in checking, money market, and savings accounts, divided by the debts facing the household over the coming year. In this example, Jane and John Smith have $2,225 in liquid assets with which to cover their bills. Over 12 months, they have to pay bills amounting to $18,080. The $18,080 in total current debt comes from total current liabilities of $1,050, plus mortgage payments of $11,500, plus auto loan payments of $4,280, plus appliance and furniture payments of $1,250. Dividing their total liquid assets by their total current debts finds that their personal liquidity ratio is 12.2%. One way to think about this is that if Jane and John lost their jobs, they could continue to pay their bills with liquid assets for about 5 or 6 weeks, or roughly 12% of 1 year. Many financial advisors recommend that their clients have emergency funds consisting of liquid assets sufficient to cover 3 to 6 months of bills. This would translate into a personal liquidity ratio of 25 to 50%. The Smiths appear to be falling far short of that recommendation.
Okay, so the next ratio I want to talk about is the quick acid test ratio. All right. And this is very similar to the current ratio, except that you notice what they do here. They take off the inventory. And the reason they do that is the inventory at times could be very, very difficult to get rid of, right? Depending on whatever industry you're in. Say you make like networking cards for computers and you have a large inventory of networking cards or even laptops for that matter. The industry changes so fast you have a hard time getting rid of them, okay? So, and also, so, I mean, if you have inventory in a supermarket, you may, it has a very short shelf life and you may have trouble getting rid of that, right? So they say, let's remove the inventory to make the number more realistic to see what I have. So you can see what they do here. And here's 2015 and here's 2016. So you can see they're subtracting off the inventory. And once again, if you don't know where these numbers came from, just please email me and I'll help you in a second. So you can see their quick ratio, again, is higher in 2016 than it is in 2015. So, and again, now, it's just a number, but here's the important point. And let me just highlight this for you, okay? My fellow colleagues, let me highlight this for you. The important question arising from these calculations is whether Whole Foods was building up cash it perceived a need because it perceived a need for greater financial safety. because it was planning to use the cash for a major investment or for some other reason. So again, and there's a blurb here about how important inventories are and how they differ for different industries. Okay, and everyone has different methods of types of inventory. Apple's products are very popular, so they don't have much inventory. And as with the current ratio, the quick ratio level that a firm should strive to achieve depends largely on the nature of the business in which it operates. The quick ratio provides a better measure of overall liquidity only when a firm's inventory cannot be easily converted into cash. All right, so that's important. And you should, if you go over these review questions, it'll give you a good idea that you know the topic. Okay, so I would go over these review questions. All right, so now let's jump to the activity ratios. And the activity ratios, let's click on this, okay? Measure the speed with which various accounts are converted into sales or cash, or inflows or outflows. So how active are you in converting things into cash? So it measures the speed with which various asset and liability accounts are converted into cash. So we'll highlight that because that's an important statement. All right, let's make that pink. All right. A number of ratios measure the activity of the most important current ratios accounts, which include inventory, accounts receivable, and accounts payable. Right. So now accounts receivable, everyone should be aware. Accounts receivable means what? The money people bought a product on you and they haven't paid you yet. They bought it on credit. Okay. All right. And accounts payable is you owe money to your creditors, right? Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is called inventory turnover. And inventory turnover is cost of goods sold divided by inventory. Cost of goods sold comes off of the income statement. You all should know that, right? And inventory comes off of the balance sheet, right? That comes off of the balance sheet, right? So cost of goods sold represents the cost of all items sold by the firm in a year. So it's what you paid for the items. So let's remember that, all right? Whereas inventory refers to the goods on hand at any moment. And it could be raw material, partially built, or completed and waiting to be shipped to someone. So the important line here is we arrive at a figure that represents the number of times per year the company turns over or sells its inventory balance. So how many times are you selling your inventory balance, right? So a good example of that, right? There was a large inventory of homes on the island, and people are now moving out of New York City. So they're buying homes out here to get out of the city, and the inventory is turning over rather quickly. Okay? So here's the inventory turnover for Whole Foods, and you can see this number hasn't really changed from over the 2 years. Okay? So it turned over the inventory in 2000 and 2015 and 16, 19.9 times. Another activity ratio measures how many days of inventory the firm has on hand. You can easily convert inventory turnover into average age. Now this is important, average age of inventory. So now this is telling you how many days will you have it. Okay? How many days will you have it? So how do you convert from inventory turnover to average age of inventory? You divide the turnover ratio into 365, okay? So let's highlight that. So if the Whole Foods sells its inventory 19.9 times within a single year, then that means its inventory balance lasts on average about 18.3 days. So you should understand the difference between those, right? And that's important. That's important to know. Okay, so there's a nice blurb here about different industries and how often things turn over. Okay, so the next ratio is the average collection period. And the average collection period, or average age of accounts receivable, and we'll highlight that with this color, is useful in evaluating credit and collection policies. It equals the accounts receivable balance divided by average daily sales. Okay, so accounts receivable comes off of the balance sheet, right? You should know that, right? And average sales per day is the sales on the income statement divided by 365. Notice here how it's per day, okay? You see how they do that here? That's important to know. So here's the work for 2015 and 2016. And so basically they're able to collect their money from this people who buy from them every about 5.5 days. So it's 5.6 for 2016 and 5.2 for 2015, which kind of means that things they're taking them a little longer to collect in 2016 than it did for 2015, right? So again, and they tell you why it's so short, right? Most customers pay with cash or a check or a credit card here. Okay, so anyway, so this is basically average collection period. Okay, all right. So I will make a. I'm going to save this and make a part 5, and we'll pick up right here. Okay.